Hey, integrated science friends. Today we are going to talk about modern constellations versus asterisms. What's the difference between a modern constellation and an asterism? What are similarities to them? Are they related? Are they not related? Let's get started. The first thing I want to talk to you about, I want to go back. First of all, we talked a little bit about modern constellations last time, in that they're a section of the sky, and we specifically looked at Ursa Major, and that was where the Big Dipper was in. The Big Dipper exists inside of Ursa Major. These are the modern constellations. There's 88 of them, and they're recognized by a group called the International Astronomical Union, the IAU. They're responsible for naming everything that we find. Any comet, any asteroid, any planet, any star. They are the ones in charge of cataloging all that stuff. And these IAU designated constellations, these modern constellations, so here's one. It's called Andromeda. I can just click on that, and I can go to the picture here, and this actually shows you what stars are cataloged inside of Andromeda. And it's neat because they tell you how bright they are. A number 2 magnitude is much brighter than number 6. You can see here, this is what's called the Andromeda Galaxy. It exists inside of, big surprise, the constellation Andromeda. Merak, this star, Almach, all these different stars are found within the constellation, or this boundary right here. So this is what a modern constellation is. And I jump back here, and you can see all of, nope, this is just Andromeda. But these are all 88 of them. You can click on any one of these, and it will take you to just an in-depth history, all sorts of cool stuff. And I'm going to give each of you one of these constellations. You're going to pick one. You're going to draw the stars inside of it. You're going to tell us what it comes from, like just a little bit of history behind it all, and so on. Next, I want to talk about asterisms. An asterism, it's a simple shape. So the Big Dipper that you know of, and maybe you know of other ones that are up in the sky, when you do the connect the dots, this is what we refer to as an asterism. There's all sorts of asterisms up in the sky. And originally, the asterisms that we all know, like when you talk about Orion and Orion's belt, those were the ancient constellations have now been rebranded by the International Astronomical Union as modern constellations. So here, Draco, this is an asterism, these connecting the dots, this dragon. The Little Dipper is an asterism. These are the ancient constellations. So I've got a fun little video to kind of show you guys and talk to you more about the differences and similarities to constellations and asterisms that I thought she's got lots of really great little animations, and we'll talk about those.
We've spent the last few episodes talking about the effects of the atmosphere on the geosphere and the hydrosphere on the biosphere, as well as solving some pretty big engineering problems. So how about we take a break from Earth this time and talk about space? Now you might be thinking, but we've already learned about stars. Well, you're right, or at least you've been paying attention. But we learned about individual stars, basically how they do what they do as solo acts out there in the universe. But what happens when a bunch of stars band together to form a supergroup, sort of like the Avengers of the night sky? Well, then they're called a constellation. Today we'll talk about these groups of stars and why they're so important to astronomers, besides being just plain cool.
Now remember, there's a difference between ancient constellations and modern constellations. Let's see if she makes the difference.
Or hot. You know what I mean. So, what exactly is a constellation? A constellation is a cluster of stars in the sky that have been grouped together in a pattern or shape and have been given a name. But before we take a closer look at constellations, let's review what a star is. Remember, a star is a bright object in space that gives off light through energy that it makes in its core. The sun is the most famous star to us Earthlings. We've already talked about a few other well-known stars, though, like bright Betelgeuse. Astronomers use bright stars like Betelgeuse as markers in the sky to help find other, less bright objects in space. For example, if you were looking for a dim star like Sirius B, you might have to look for a long time to spot it among the many, 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 many other stars in the sky. But if you're able to spot a much brighter star like Sirius A, and you know that Sirius B is located to the lower left of Sirius A, then it'll be much easier to find Sirius B. Like I said, there are so many stars in the sky that trying to spot just one can be tough, especially if it's not near a bright one like Betelgeuse or Sirius A. That's where constellations come in. Astronomers use constellations to help them better map the night sky. Think of stars like cities on a map and constellations like countries. Finding a large shape in the sky made of many stars is a lot easier to spot than trying to find one single speck. Plus, there are only 88 named constellations, which is a much more reasonable number to deal with than a billion. And most of the 88 recognized constellations came from the ancient Greeks. The stars in a constellation aren't related in any particular way. They just form a shape that the Greeks used to tell stories about their gods, goddesses, and mythical creatures like flying horses and giant scorpions. Now that we know what a constellation is, why don't we get to know some of the more famous ones? Harry Potter fans will recognize the name of our first constellation. Its name means dragon in Latin and also happens to be the name of Harry's biggest nemesis. Well, second biggest after he who must not be named, of course. Yep. It's Draco. According to legend, Draco was a dragon killed by the goddess Minerva and was tossed into the sky. Draco is one of 48 constellations described way back in the 2nd century by Egyptian astronomer Ptolemy. People have been seeing this dragon-like shape in the night sky for a long time. Constellations aren't just named after creatures, though. Some are named after mythical people, particularly gods and goddesses. One of the more well-known Greek gods has his own constellation, and a Disney movie. I'll give you a hint. He'll go the distance. It's Hercules. The stars in the Hercules constellation take the shape of the mighty hero as if he's holding a bow after just releasing an arrow. You go, Hercules. The name of our next notable constellation also makes an appearance in the Hercules movie as a super cute winged horse. Say hello to Pegasus. According to Greek mythology, Hercules never actually rode Pegasus like in the movie, but the flying horse did spend some time with Zeus, king of the gods. Zeus liked Pegasus so much he transformed him into a constellation and placed him in the night sky for everyone to see. Now, you're familiar with at least 3 of the 88 constellations in our sky, only 85 more to go. As the Earth rotates, you'll see Draco, Hercules, and Pegasus, plus all the other constellations over the course of a year. But more on when and where you can see the constellations in the next episode. So now you know what a star is, and that a cluster of stars in the sky that are grouped together in a particular pattern is called a constellation. Besides having really cool shapes and stories behind their names, constellations help astronomers and us map the night sky. Since space is so huge and massive and ginormous, our map is far from complete. So anything that helps us navigate that vast, well, space of space is okay by me. Thanks for the help, constellations.
Awesome. So, with this said, remember the big difference here between an asterism and a constellation. The modern constellations are these sections. There's 88 of them, and they kind of correspond with the ancient constellations. The ancient constellations, we now call them asterisms. And asterisms are the connecting of the dots. Asterisms, right here, these pictures, asterisms. Modern constellations. So with that said, I'm going to give each of you guys your own constellation, some of the more famous ones, and you'll just do a little bit of research on it. Fill it in, tell us what it's named after, who named it, if there's any cool stories associated with it. Thanks for watching.